Welcome to 1,001 Ways to Cope with Stress. I am Professor Kinshasha Shabaka, and we are now ready to listen to part 2 of Dr. Monderson's presentation of Narmer, the Conqueror.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Professor. And as I began and ended the last session, I talked about the interrogative hypothesis. What is the source of Narmer's inspiration and intellectual and administrative know-how? So the kingdom that we discovered that the New York Times reported as being the earliest form of monarchy found in Nubia was called Ta-Seti. And we know that at Ta-Seti, there's evidence of boats. Remember that Narmer sailed down the river and conquered and engaged and conquered Lower Egyptian kingdom. The Eastern Desert petroglyphs show evidence of boats. Quote unquote, 1,000 years before Winkler's Mesopotamia. There was this German named Winkler who visited this region in 1938, and he said that when he saw evidence that in some of the walls of resting places, he said, oh, well, it was Mesopotamians who arrived and did this work. The Africans couldn't do it. So in 2003, Toby Wilkinson found this information, and he said that it was created 1,000 years before Winkler's Mesopotamians. The combination, arrangement, administration of the logistics for the voyage and the post-battle administration to harness the booty indicated an effective bureaucracy. Where did he learn this? He had to have learned it from an existing kingdom which was to the south of Egypt. Later, according to Flinders Petrie, the father of modern archaeology, Egyptian archaeology, he said that the 17th dynasty kicked out the Hyksos who had occupied Egypt in the 16th, 15th, and 16th dynasty, and they became the people who founded the 18th New Kingdom dynasty. He said that the 17th dynasty, coming from Nubia, held Thebes as its capital. Given from the first dynasty onward and from Narmer's time, uniformity of culture prevailed throughout the land, and Upper Egypt essentially represented from Elephantine down to the fork of the delta. So most of Egypt was actually south. There was a theory that there were two, there are lots of theories, right? But there was this theory that there were two people occupying Egypt. To the north were the Europeans who lived in the delta, and to the south were the Africans or the Negroes who lived from Elephantine all the way down to Memphis, where Narmer would ultimately establish his capital. Well, Alexander Moret was a French scholar. He wrote this book in 1926, and he said essentially, well, just let me backtrack, because the American scholar James Henry Breasted argued that the northern kingdom, he called it the first civilization, the northern kingdom conquered the south. We don't know what happened after that. Then the second unification was Narmer's conquest of the north. So in 1926, Moret says, but by whom was the South influenced, if not by the North? And Dr. Diop said, well, if that is so, why all the monuments of significance and the sites in the South and not in the North? Okay, so he demolished that argument that, that the North had been prominent. But we must remember, the Egyptian kingship system, according to Egyptian beliefs, was a divinely organized and constructive system of government and order that was planned in the heavens by the gods, who ruled and then were succeeded by demigods and ultimately by the king in the person of Narmer. Okay, Narmer beginning the new system, many of the people bought into it because there were a lot of new ideas and they felt safe under a single government as opposed to warring mini-states. Much of what influenced Narmer is called the Memphite theology. Memphite theology, that is, it's called Memphite theology, but it came out of the temple of Anu, or An, of the Bible, that the Greeks call Heliopolis. And An was founded by a black people from the south who founded many cities as they sailed north. Erment, Esna, and several others, including Heliopolis. So what is called the Memphite theology was the religious theology indicating the actions of the gods when they planned the state of Egypt. Now, I mentioned Nabta Playa. There were early stargazers who mapped the heavens dating to about 8000 BC. They created a calendar to predict the summer rains that provided vegetation for farming and cattle feeding. The summer rains enabled the growth of greenery that fed the cattle and encouraged agricultural practices. Cattle was a main source of and display of prosperity. They were kept principally for milk and blood and not for meat. Sacrifice of cattle was thus a sacred occasion. These Africans initiated worship of the cow goddess. While some have argued it was not Hathor at first, ultimately she emerged as a source of worship. Movement and arrangement of large stone laid the foundation for monumental architecture, culminate in such practices as such structures as the pyramids. Nabta Playa folk accumulated tremendous amount of scientific knowledge. When the rains began to dry up, these people migrated to the valley of the Nile. There, it is argued, they applied such knowledge and are considered the precursors to the pharaohs. Ta-Seti, we mentioned Ta-Seti. Evidence indicates some 200 years before unification in Egypt, the kingdom of Ta-Seti in Nubia represented the world's earliest form of monarchy. There we see enthroned pharaoh wearing the white crown, the palace facade, the Horus bird, sailing boats, incense burns, etc. The knowledge gained from these two cultures, Nabta Playa and Ta-Seti, combined with the petroglyphs from the eastern desert, benefited Egypt tremendously. The cow goddess became manifest as Hathor, and we see her on the Narmer palette. We see her Una, the 6th dynasty explorer who discovered that people from an unknown land were worshiping the same god we see on Narmer's palette. Hathor is represented as a Nubian lady coming out of the head of a principal cow in the procession of the sons of Ramses II, 19th dynasty, as they were heading to the temple of Luxor that he added, that was first constructed by Amenhotep III. It's interesting because I was there with my son last year, and we sat down, and the guys come and they show this important image of these sons of Ramses II going to the temple, but they never go to see the lady coming out, the Nubian lady coming out of the head of the cow, because she was important, but they don't know that, or they don't want you to know that. So Henry Frankfurt, in his book called Kingship and the Gods, indicated that by Narmer's time, numbers were very high. They had developed a writing system. They were using metal tool technology. There were new forms of art that they began, that they were creating pottery of high quality, and they had created the monarchy system. One authority pointed out in studying the cranium, the head arrangement of these people, that the physique of the inhabitants of this valley from the delta deep into the Nubia remain much the same from pre-dynastic to late historic times. It is interesting because this is a European saying that, but look at how he orients the study. He orients the study from the delta to Nubia. And the culture and the river is a river culture. The river culture flows from Nubia to the delta. So even though he's right, he's wrong. It's one of those amazing unique instances of history. Now, Aristotle, the great Greek philosopher, he said that the Egyptians and the Ethiopians were cowards because they were black. He says that they were black, and he says they were cowards. He was right because that they were black, but he's wrong because they were cowards, because when you look at the battles of history that blacks have fought, we're not cowards. So he was right and wrong. And here's another guy, okay? There was another guy, a late 26th dynasty pharaoh, confronted with the Greeks encroaching upon Egyptian territory in the delta. He agreed to give the Greeks, to confine the Greeks to the port city of Naucratis. And he moved everybody in there, and they were satisfied, he was satisfied. So those are instances where important events occur in history where people are both right and wrong, but it's the same thing, okay? So, order, because his disorder is spilling over into my kingdom. So, quote unquote, in the aid of the ancestors, and that takes us back to all that we've been speaking about, Ta-Seti, the influence of pre-dynastic developments on Narmer's quest to unify Egypt. He invaded Egypt in the 24th dynasty, and then they succeeded and created the 25th dynasty. So it's Kashta, he's the first Nubian found at Elephantine Island in Aswan. And then he was succeeded by his son Pianke, and Pianke was succeeded by his brother Shabaka. And then Shabaka was his throne was usurped by Shabataka. And then on the Shabaka, Taharka, as a youngster, 20 years old, he went north with Shabaka when Shabaka assumed pharaonic powers in Egypt. He was courageous and brave, so that Shabaka puts this 20-year-old in charge of Egyptian and Ethiopian forces to defend Egypt against the Assyrians. Okay? Now his legacy was treacherously challenged by Shabataka. And he killed Shabataka and assumed control when it was his time to rule Egypt. Taharqa was a significant, not just a fighting pharaoh, but he was a great administrator and a builder. He built extensively and left evidence of his magnificence, particularly at Karnak Temple. And you know Karnak is a temple that took 2,000 years to build. Okay? Now, it is interesting that the dynasty itself, the dynasty looked back to the formative old kingdom. And again, we begin to, our glasses may be a bit foggy, but we can see connections between Narmer, the old kingdom, and this 25th dynasty. Now, there's a temple called Medinet Habu where Ramses III of the 20th dynasty built his mortuary temple. But in the outer court of that temple, there are two things. There are two temples. One, an older 18th dynasty temple, and two, the temple of Queen Amendaris, who was Pianke's sister. And when you get in there, you can't get in there right now because they locked gate. Well, but I've been there before, and I got my pictures. You see that the images on the walls mirror the old kingdom images. These people look back to this first golden age for inspiration, and we can argue then that it was their inspiration that created the first golden age, so they were really going back to what they had first given Egypt. Okay? So, we had talked about the Shabaka stone and what it meant. In his book, In Pursuit of George M. James' Study of African Origins in Western Civilization, Dr. Ben Johanan, in seeking to explain the impact of George M. James's stone legacy, one of the bases or the principal basis of Egyptian esoteric, philosophic, and religious knowledge writes, first of all, in chapter 7, in a description of the curriculum of the Egyptian mysteries. Through the curriculum of the Egyptian mysteries, it is not known that the African continent has given the following legacy to the civilization of the world. It consists of the following culture patterns. 1. Holy Catholic orders together with a priesthood divided into ranks according to training. 2. Holy Catholic worship consisting of rituals, ceremonies including processions, and appropriate vestments of priests. 3. Greek philosophy and the arts and sciences, including the seven liberal arts, that is the quadrivium and the trivium, which were the foundation training of neophytes. These were included in the 42 books of thought, or Hermes. The applied sciences, which produced the pyramids, tombs, libraries, obelisks, and sphinxes, the war chariots, and the ships. And this here takes us back to where did Narmer get his information from, okay? The social sciences, appropriate for the highest civilization in ancient times. And it tells you who to read: the Stromata of Clement of Alexandria, the mechanical triumphs of the ancient Egyptians, the history of mathematics, and so forth. Then he continued in chapter 8, again why we need to be critical in reading the evidence. One, Memphite theology is actually the religious philosophy of the temples of called On, the temple of An called Heliopolis by the Greeks. Two, An was founded by the Anu. These were black race from the south of Egypt and beyond. Three, while Petrie identified 5 or 6 pre-Narmer kings, Amelinu in Diop's African origin civilization, myth or reality, gives 16 kings, which indicated that there was a system of government. And the New York Times article about Ta-Seti indicates that there was something going on. These Africans were not sitting around waiting for to experience a white man's burden, for him to bring civilization and salvation to Africa. Okay? The Memphite theology. The definition of the Memphite theology. The Memphite theology is an inscription, and I need to come back sometime and do a session on the Memphite theology so that we will get a better understanding of what it is. It's a Shabaka. It's called a Shabaka, like your name. He found a papyrus that was rotting, and he had it translated onto a stone. And those portions that were extant at the time that he found is what has remained, so that
Called the Shabaka
the
stone.
world now, I mean, these guys hide the ball, and we got to search in order to find the information. Anyway, the Shabaka stone is in the British Museum. I call it culture in captivity. Again, I was making this, as we were talking earlier, about the archaeologists did the work. We got to give them credit. But they had pick of the crop of what they found, which they took home, whether for the museums, government buildings, for schools, private collections, or what have you. They have some of the most unique. Lord Carnarvon, who underwrote Howard Carter, who found King Tut, he had one of the most unique collections. He sold it to the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. Right? Now, the Shabaka stone is in the British Museum with so much others, and we need to be able to access it. And it's out there. The thing is that they're hiding this stuff in plain sight, but they're confusing the interpretation so that unless we are prepared to spend hours analyzing the information. So the Memphite theology is really the Shabaka stone named after this king who saved it from oblivion. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the importance of the Shabaka stone lies in the fact that, one, it is an authoritative source of Egyptian philosophy, cosmology, and religion. And secondly, it is proof of the Egyptian origin of Greek philosophy. 3, the source of modern scientific knowledge. The atom, the Egyptian Atum, which is the Egyptian sun god. You see, in the morning it's called Atum. At midday is, when the sun is high, is Ra, and in the evening, I can't really think about it. He who is the Logos of Heraclitus. He's the demiurge of Plato and the unmoved mover of Aristotle. So different people in different times use the god for their own interpretation and presentation. And you got to uncover all of this so that you can get to the source and understand what it is that they're talking. In essence, then, they hide the ball in plain sight and you don't see it. He creates 8 gods by projecting them from his own body, thus producing 9 gods of the Ennead or the Ennead. This is identical with the nebular hypothesis of Laplace, in which the original sun, our sun, creates 8 other planets by just kicking them pieces of the actual sun's body, and over a period of time, because of the heavenly phenomenon, they become planets. And in which the original sun creates 8 other planets by throwing off rings from itself, thus producing 9 major planets of modern scientific belief. And B, it has been shown in pages 146 and 147 of this book, his book, Solar Legacy, and it was published in 1954 by the New York Philosophical Society, that the name of Atom, the Egyptian sun god, is the same name used for the atom of science, and also that attributes both are the same. It tells you to read Frankfurt's Intellectual Adventure of Ancient Men and even Herodotus, and then again Frankfurt, Kingship and the Gods. And it offers great possibilities for modern scientific research by stating that what science knows about A, the number of major planets, that's from the Memphite theology, how these major planets were created by the sun, and C, the attributes of the atom has been traced in the cosmology of the Memphite theology, which suggests that D, science knows only 1/5 of the secrets of creation. Wow. And therefore 4/5 of these secrets remain to be discovered. Consequently, the Memphite theology offers great possibilities of modern scientific research. They knew it. With all our accomplishments, we only know 1/5. In his book, African Philosophy, the Pharaonic Period, 2780 to 330 BC, Theophilo Benga, he was Dr. Diop's assistant. He talks about how the world came into being, that the universe was created by a divinity who was in another universe and stepped into this universe, and using liquid matter created everything else that we've come to accept as existence.